Hello, Cosplay World. We're back with the third in a set of 6 videos covering this WoW armor dragon humanification thing. So, if you're interested in the full set, it will be listed on FileCosplay.com. And I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for the support. There's also like pictures and stuff, of course. There's way more pictures of this. And I hope you check that out. Again, link in description. This time around, we are making the arm sections, that is to say, the bracers and the gloves for this armor. And as a base, we are going to be working with some PVC foam sheeting, and we're going to be making kind of like half gauntlet things. Now, these aren't going to wrap entirely around the arm. They're only going to go, I guess, 3/4 of the way. We're going to leave a nice inch and a half gap, depending where you are, so that we can get in and out of them fairly easily. Remember, PVC foam sheeting is a bit more rigid than other thermoformable materials, and so it holds its shape a bit better, but it also is less flexible. Yeah, so if you're trying to wrap your arm completely around, you'll probably want to leave a little space so you can get in and out. But this will be covered in EVA foam, craft foam, foamies, foam mats, and various other foam materials. This is to create the texture and the details that we'll need for our piece. So as you can see, we're adding a bit of detail to the top here, and we're going to be making the base with this. Foam definitely emulates the texture of charcoal exceptionally well. Now, if you want to get fancy, I would also recommend lining your armor, because lining things makes things a little bit more professional looking, and also can add a bit of comfort here because the plastic is rigid. So if you're finding your armor if you're working with PVC foam sheeting, it's pinching you, and you're used to EVA foam being much more flexible, my suggestion is to line it to give it a bit of cushion around the edges. In fact, I often trim all of my armor in Warbler. 1, because it rounds out the edges and makes it a little bit more comfortable. 2, because Warbler takes a good convention beating. It will bounce back fairly well. So, once we have the shape trace, and I'm happy with the final design, you see I'm coming in and using the pieces I cut out previously as templates. It's not exactly the perfect kind of parallelogram. I'm going to use the word parallelogram, whether it's correct or not. And we are adjusting it to be more suitable to the shape of the overall finish. We're going to be mounting in place with a bit of silicone caulk and tying it down, so make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and let that cure. I believe I'm going to say I let that cure overnight before I work with it. If you want a little bit better dry time, I'm going to say maybe contact cement. If you are working and you have no patience and you just want it done now, I'm going to say go with hot glue, but hot glue doesn't stick very well to smooth surfaces, and that plastic is a very smooth surface, and so it'll maybe peel up a little easier than the other glues that I'm using here. So, in my previous video, I mentioned that I like to use Warbler for things that generally make contact with the convention itself. And here's a good example of it. The claws on my gloves are going to be made of Warbler. Here, because it's made of a very flexible, very flexible, it'll take a punch and it'll bounce back material, I don't need to worry about replacing or breaking it, or for the material to be so hard as to damage the convention itself. I also don't want to hurt other people's cosplays and things like that, so Warbler is a good choice. It'll bend and flex. But it's more rigid than, say, EVA foam, where EVA foam would just get kind of tore up by things like concrete if you're walking, if you've got on your shoes. So it's a good medium ground here for that. And you can see I'm using, LE6000? Turn the bottle over so I can read the glue. We're gonna use a nice heavy glue here for the Warbler. The texture on Warbler does fit very well with a lot of glues. It's not sensitive to a whole lot. Goop. Goop. Oh, I'm just using Goop. Regular old Goop. It's a brand of glue. So once they're in place, we're going to let them sit. I believe I got these gloves because they're already sort of the theme. They look like what I wanted to make in the first place, and it's kind of important that I have good strong places to mount my armor onto. because I don't want them to shift anywhere. Sometimes I can get heavier gloves that are just a pain in the butt to stitch through, or lighter gloves where the armor I put on top just shifts away and it's of no use. But for these, I found them with, oh look, I can put the armor for the knuckle right on where those knuckle spots are. Perfect! I could put a nice stitch or a nice eyelet through that logo on the top of the glove there. And it also was a pretty cool pattern on the hands, on the inside of the hands as well. We're going to be adding a bit of paint details and things like that too. So overall, these were pretty good. I do buy kind of these work gloves with a material on the back that is easily stitched onto armor. I have a bunch of them. I'll try and point that out the next time I make a glove armor tutorial with that specific kind of glove. But for these, I spent a little bit more for these nicer gloves for this cosplay. So, once this is in place, we're going to be adding they're kind of like the shape of bones, but weird because they're going to turn into charcoal things. We're going to make a sort of bone pieces and layer them over the existing padding, and that is going to serve as our armor pieces. I know you'll kind of be able to see what's underneath, but don't worry, once we start layering the pieces over each other and put a bit of paint on there, it will be very difficult to distinguish. Also because you've seen like the footage anyway, you know what it looks like at the end of the day. I'm not really surprising you here, am I? So for these, a little bit of glue is not going to be doing the job. The Warbler is on a single point, so you don't have to worry about it popping off too much. But because the bone bits are on pieces that are going to flex, are going to move, we are first going to glue them down, and then we're going to reinforce them with a little bit of stitching. I'm going to try and keep the stitching to a minimum because the EVA foam doesn't take particularly well to stitching, but the details are too small and too delicate to hold things like screws. So stitching here is going to be my best bet. I would suggest stitching at least 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 inch from the edge so that we don't end up ripping through the material. But otherwise, trying to do, I guess, hot glue is also a good... Hot glue will work for a period of time, but it will eventually pull away. That's why I'm going with stitching here in this case. We have a few more details. Obviously, we're adding them over the top and gluing them in place. We're going to let this sit overnight for, well, I guess 24 hours is overnight, 12 hours. And then we're going to come back to it and add a bit more of the details. We do have some heavier pieces we're going to come back to with the glove, as you can see here. Yeah, we're going to let that sit and put a bit of pressure on it and come back and stitch it down in place. But while that cures, let's finish up the arm bracers. Yeah, let's put those away and work on the arm bracers. Right, do it! So this right now is rather boring and needs a bit more work. We put tape on there to make sure that while the silicone cured overnight, it didn't move or shift or didn't put pressure on the foam. This allows it to cure nicely, I guess. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys get the idea. Now, once we have that in place, we're going to add all the details. And we can use a variety of glue at this point. We can use more silicone. Hot glue will work absolutely 100%. Contact cement is also a good choice. So all of these pieces are going to be done up in a bit of silicone just to match the texture. Also because the silicone is kind of lavy, and I use that to its fullest effect in this work to kind of emulate the texture of lava. Now, silicone doesn't particularly paint very well, so you're going to want to use either a heavy paint or sand up the surface so it takes a little better. There's also a trick where you can actually mix the acrylic paint into it with just a light amount of silicone so it bonds to it and it adheres a little easier too. So basically, I'm going to be mirroring each arm and trying to keep track. I'm going to do it one piece at a time, making sure that they match on both sides. Also making sure that I can get in and out of it. You'll see there's snaps on the inside where it's less visible. That allows us to close it and hide kind of our arms in there without having it exposed. We do want these to eventually stick on our arms permanently, and that's one of the things that happens when you have these half circle bracers, is that they're obviously not completely surrounding your arms. We will be adding some chips of 8 of the thin craft foam as filler and finishing it up with that. But otherwise, it's done exactly the same way as the boots. We're going to move on to a bit of sewing. I hope you guys enjoy. Good times to all. Hurrah! Go check out finalcosplaycore.com for more on this and other awesome cosplay goodness. Links in the description. Hope you guys enjoy. Good times to all.